Welcome to the France 24 interview. We are joined today here at NATO headquarters in Brussels by General John Allen, who is actually currently the commander of the ISAF, the International Stability Assistance Force in Afghanistan. General,
good afternoon.
How do you do? Thank you for joining us here.
It's my pleasure.
You have been been named commander of the International Stability and Assistance Force in Afghanistan last summer. How is the situation today? Has it come better as what you found when you went into office?
That's a good question. I think it has improved. The enemy-initiated attacks across the country are down significantly in the south and in the north and in the west. There are still there's some significant enemy activity in the east, but those numbers are down as well. For 32 of the last 40 months, in fact, the enemy-initiated attacks have been lower than the same week last year. And so that's a significant improvement.
You also have to count and rely on the national forces that fight alongside your troops in Afghanistan. That is the Afghan National Army and Afghan National Police. What is the objective? What's the number of troops you need to have before NATO leaves the theater of operations?
The intent now is for the full Afghan National Security Force to be 352,000. Now we'll complete our recruitment to that in October of this year. We'll finish the building and the fielding of the Army by December of 13, and we'll finish the Air Force in 16. So 352 is the force that we're building to today.
And there was some debate during this ministerial meeting here in Brussels about this volume actually. Some countries seem to think that a number around 200,000, 230,000 should be sufficient for a peacetime army. What is your opinion on that?
Well, I don't dispute the number, but I think we were all generally agreed that 352 is what we need now, ultimately for the Afghan National Security Forces to take lead in this counterinsurgency campaign, to provide stability for some period of time after 2014. And then when we're satisfied that the enemy situation has changed, that the security has been established, that the opportunity for governance has progressed and economic opportunities are beginning to become available, we'll begin to see that 352,000 person force begin to come down. Now, what it ultimately will look like, how quickly that force will be formed, all of that remains to be determined, and a lot of that conversation is going to occur here in Brussels, here at NATO, over the next couple of months.
And you are going to discuss that, well, NATO is going to discuss that and the summit in Chicago in May. There is not only the volume, but there is also the question of the quality. How does it look like today? Do you reach the standards you wanted for the officers and NCOs in the National Army?
Very important question. We're working on that now. We needed to get the force recruited, get it into the field, and we're bringing online all of the officer training, NCO training, non-commissioned officer training as well, which is very important to the sustainment of a professional military force. So we're doing that now. Once the numbers stabilize at 352, we concentrated initially on the quantity of the military. While we're working now on quality, it will become a really important priority for us once 352 has been established, and for the long term, actually.
The focus on quality should be also, it seems, focused on measures to counter infiltration within the Afghan National Forces. We have had the 4 French soldiers who were killed in the Kapisa Valley. What measures should be taken to ensure that no Taliban or would-be terrorists infiltrate or are recruited within the Afghan National Forces?
That's a very important question. Let me start by saying how much I'd like to offer my condolences to the French audience and to the French people, and certainly to the families of those French soldiers who were killed tragically that day. Minister Wardak, the Minister of Defense, Engineer Nabil, who's the Director General of the National Directorate of Security, and I are working very closely to put in place a set of measures on the Afghan side that goes to great lengths to vet the recruits, to ensure that we're watching for radicalization and extremism in the soldier population as it goes through school, to ensure we're keeping an eye on the soldiers and their operating units. Extensive measures, an 8-step vetting measure, in fact, vetting process. On our side, we're ensuring that training is up to speed, that we have enunciated the training that all forces need to undertake before they come into the theater. And so in a partnership, I, as the commander of ISAF, working closely with the Minister of Defense and the Director of National Security, we're going to work together in partnership, very close partnership, to do all that we can to minimize the possibility of infiltration of the Afghan National Army or the Afghan National Police. And
for that, you also need to look at what the military call, I think, the level of attrition, that is, number of troops that come and go, well, could call them deserters, I don't know exactly if that fits into the general description. It seems to be a problem within the national Afghan forces as well.
Well, the number is a problem right now, just a pure number. But remember, this is an army that has emerged truly from the ashes, from an environment where every functional institution in the country has been destroyed for all intents and purposes for 30 years. And so we've been building this army at the same time the army's had to fight. And so as we build this army, we're going to create opportunities for cohesion and esprit, all of those things that attach a soldier to a larger institution, and we're going to continue to do that. Now, your question implies, though, what about the soldiers that depart the service, depart the ranks in an unauthorized manner, and then come back? From now on, when they come back, we're going to take very extensive attention, exert extensive attention to them to ensure we know where they went, who they talked to, why they departed, and their expectations with regard to coming back. And if we don't like what we see, they're not going to get back into the service. In fact, we'll probably take other actions.
So this is a very important part of your action and your job there in Afghanistan, because you are preparing NATO's exit strategy, which is based on this so-called transition that was decided in Lisbon 2 years ago. You are one by one giving the responsibility of defense of provinces to the Afghan National Army. How do you see this processes of transition progressing? Do you really think it can be achieved by 2013, or is that too early a date?
Well, first, we're not pursuing an exit strategy. We're pursuing a success strategy, and that's really important, because transition is not about departing. Transition is about ultimately establishing the sovereignty of Afghanistan. It's a 5-step process. 5 tranches will go forward, each of them with provinces and districts that will move to full Afghan security over a period of from now to the 31st of December 2014. That's important. That roadmap was established in Lisbon, and nothing has changed about that roadmap. What's going to happen in 2013 is that with the 5th tranche, which are the remaining provinces and districts, all of the population of Afghanistan will ultimately be under the security of the Afghan National Security Forces. Now, that's a really important moment.
How much is it today?
Well, with Tranche 1 and Tranche 2 is in implementation now. It's 50% of the population. Tranche 3 will account for about 2/3. But when we get to Tranche 5, it's everyone. And at that point, the Afghan National Security Forces will be in the lead. And what's important to understand is that in a counterinsurgency, foreign forces don't win counterinsurgencies. Indigenous forces win them. And all along the ISAF strategy, the ISAF campaign plan, saw ISAF forces shaping and reducing the insurgency, while at the same time building the Afghan National Security Forces. And a great deal of energy and a great deal of resources has gone into that process. What will happen in 2013 will be that as the ANSF move to the fore, the entire population and the security responsibility will shift to their shoulders, and from that point on, we'll be supporting them.
Do you think the announcement by the French of their decision to withdraw from Afghanistan at the end of 2013 has had an effect in, well, gathering up the pace, that the speed of transition might have been affected by this decision? What the US Secretary of Defense said, the shift from combat missions to assistance and support mission. Is that in the same direction?
The two issues are completely separate. The one is a national decision that has been made. We absolutely respect the decision of the French government and ultimately the French decisions one way or the other on the employment or the redeployment of their forces. And we will support whatever ultimately is the decision of the French government. We absolutely support that. It has had no effect on the campaign plan. It has had no effect on the roadmap from Lisbon for the completion of transition in 2014.
What do you think ultimately after 2014, when the bulk of combat forces will have departed, how many Allied soldiers do you think will be necessary to continue this training assistance missions that are necessary for the future Afghan national security forces?
That number remains to be determined, and there's a lot of conversation that needs to be had about it. But I think we can talk now about roles and functions that international forces would have in Afghanistan after 2014. Almost certainly there would be a training, assisting, advising role for international forces to continue the upward spiral, if you will, of the professionalization of the Army. There may be some limited enablers, helicopter transport, perhaps helicopter medical evacuation, maybe some hospital support until the Afghan capabilities ultimately come into their own. We might even see some special operations forces that would be there to continue to train the Afghan Special Operations Forces, which frankly are quite good and getting better all the time.
Well, thanks a lot, General. That's all we have time for today. Thank you for joining us for this interview on France 24.
It is an honor to be with you and an honor to serve with the French forces.
Thank you, General.
Thank you.